Alright, hello. Back from a job interview. We're gonna get to a chapter of micro before I get to a fair stream tonight, perhaps. So let's go ahead and get started, see where we left off. She did not lack courage, that was for sure. It was just too bad her personality was so unruly, so contrary. He drifted off, and woke later to find that Karen had fallen asleep against him, her head nestled on his shoulder, breathing gently. Let's see what's next. Give me a minute to stream test, and we will begin with that. Alright, I'm back. No stream test just yet, hopefully. It's working okay. We'll test in a bit. And go from there. Man, these are really chalky, bad for my fillings, I feel like. Those vitamin C capsules. I'm just gonna drink some Eco Boost next time. Anyway, let's see then. Okay, on to chapter 31. Let us hope the stream is steady and stable. We will stream test at earliest convenience. Chapter 31. Sorry. Beretania Street, Honolulu, 30th of October, 4:30 p.m. It's strange. Dorothy Gert, senior forensic scientist with the Honolulu Police Department, kept her eyes focused on the eyepieces of a Zeiss binocular microscope. I've never seen anything like it. She stood up, and Dan Watanabe sat down at the microscope. They were in an open area subdivided by lab benches. The benches were stocked with testing equipment, imaging equipment, microscopes, computers. He adjusted the eyepieces and focused. At first he saw a small object with a metallic look. How big is it? He asked. 1 millimeter. It was somewhat larger than a poppy seed, but it was a machine, or looked like one. What the hell? He said. My feeling, too. Where'd it come from? Fong's office, Dorothy Gert said. The evidence team dusted the office for prints. They lifted this object on a print tape from a window near the lock. Watanabe changed the focus and moved his gaze up and down the object. It was damaged. It appeared to be crushed and was covered with a dark tar-like material. The object vaguely resembled a vacuum cleaner, except that it had something that looked like a fan on it. Fan blades inside a housing, a little bit like a jet engine. There was a long, flexible neck, a gooseneck, and at the end of the neck 2 sharp, flat metal pieces stuck out. "It must have fallen out of somebody's computer," he said. Dorothy Gert was standing next to him, leaning on the lab bench. She straightened up. "Does the computer have knives in it?" she said quietly. That is back to the prologue all the way from the little murder drone, so we're still quite curious if Vin Drake or someone else was responsible for that. Probably Vin Drake, but we'll see. "It must have fallen out of somebody's computer," he said. "Does computers have knives in it?" she said quietly. He looked again. What he had thought were 2 flat pieces of metal coming off the gooseneck now looked more like blades, crossed daggers gleaming. Thank you. At the end of a flexible arm. "Do you think," he began. "I want to know what you think, Dan." Watanabe turned the zoom knob. He went down into the view, deeper and deeper, magnifying the daggers. They became precious instruments, forged and polished. Each blade reminded him of a tanto, a Japanese dagger used by samurai. There was some kind of dark, dirty material smeared on the blades, and then he saw the cells, dried red blood cells. The cells were mixed with fibrin. "There's blood on it," he said. "I had noticed." "How long are those blades?" "Less than a half a millimeter," Gert answered. "Then it doesn't work," he said. "The victims bled to death from cuts up to 2 centimeters deep. The cuts opened their jugulars. These blades are far too small to cut somebody's throat. It's like trying to kill a whale with a penknife. Can't do it." They both were silent for a moment. "Except at birthdays," Watanabe added. "Excuse me, Dan? You're wrapping a birthday present. You cut the paper with scissors." "Those blades are scissors," he said. "They could have snipped large wounds in the victims." He began scanning the device, searching for identifying marks. A serial number, a printed word, a corporate logo. He found nothing of the sort. Whoever had built the device had not put on identifying marks or had carefully erased them. In other words, whoever had made the device didn't want it to be traced. Quick sound test. 3, 2, 1 for the Targaryen dynasty. Quick sound test. 3, 2, 1 for the Targaryen dynasty. Good enough. Okay. He said, "Did the autopsies turn up any more of these devices in the wounds and the blood?" "No," Gert said, "but the examiners probably wouldn't have noticed them." "What's the status of the bodies?" "Fong was cremated. Rodriguez was buried. John Doe is in the fridge." "He needs a second look." "Will do." Watanabe stood back from the microscope and put his hands in his pockets and began to walk up and down the lab. He frowned. Why was the device found on a window? If it came out of a body, how did it get to the window? How did it get into the body in the first place? He returned to the microscope and studied the little device's fan-like housing. Whoa, it was a propeller. My gosh, this thing could fly, Dorothy. That's speculative, Dorothy Gert said dryly. It could swim in blood. Possibly. Can you recover DNA from the blood that's stuck on the device? A prim smile. I can get DNA from a flea's sneeze, Dan. I'd like to see it if the blood on the device matches any of the victim's blood. That would be interesting, Dorothy Gert said. Her cynical eyes brightened a little. They make small robots, he murmured. What, Dan? He stood up. Nice work, Dorothy. Dorothy Gert gave Lieutenant Watanabe a faint smile, hardly a smile at all. What did the lieutenant think she did with her time in the forensic lab other than nice work? With exquisite care, she picked up the tiny object with a pair of tweezers and lowered it into a plastic vial smaller than her pinky. and carried the vial into the evidence locker area. After all, she could be handling a murder weapon. Watanabe went out thinking, Nanogen, small robots. Now there seemed to be a link between the Willy Fong mess and Nanogen. Time to have a chat with the CEO. Then Drake had dropped by the communications center. He had kicked the young woman operator out of the room and locked the door, and had taken over the pinger himself. Now he gazed into a screen that displayed a three-dimensional terrain map of the northwest cliffs of Manoa Valley, from the valley's bottom to the structure of Tantalus Crater, 2,000 feet above. Near the top of Tantalus Cliffs, at the base of the crater, he saw a circle with crosshairs over it. This showed the approximate location of the stolen hexapod. The survivors, he could see, had made it nearly to the lower slopes of Tantalus Crater. At the rate they were climbing, they would reach Tantalus Base maybe by tomorrow morning, unless a predator got them. He couldn't control the predators. What he could control was Tantalus Base. Sitting in the communications room, Drake got out his encrypted corporate phone and called Don McKeel. The hexapod is getting close. We will leave it at that for now. Hope you enjoyed Micro Chapter 31. Stand by for a fair stream tonight, but if not, there is always tomorrow. Hope you enjoy. I think that's about it for now. I'm going to consolidate some other resources and see how things look for the evening. Take care. Talk to you soon. And thanks to the lurker for popping by. See you shortly.